So I'm really excited to be here in the morning at 8:45 after a long evening yesterday, and you are too. So thank you for coming. It's we want to start early, and we have a great topic to start with today. So I'm excited because we met Vera in Switzerland. We have this really famous Drupal camp called the Mountain Camp in Davos. So, and one of the organizers met Vera, or actually was working with Vera many years ago, and they've been staying in touch. You know, Josef, thank you for staying in touch with Vera, because he came, here you are. So Vera came and spoke at Drupal Camp Davos, and we got so excited about the topic. We thought that how she presented it was really nice. So we decided to invite her here today. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Vera. Vera is living in Bern in Switzerland, and she works for a company called Schulke. I'm trying my best to pronounce that. And I think she has a master in organization studies and cultural theory from the University of St. Gallen, and has just generally been very interested in this topic, has of course, like, is a consultant, has a lot of extra degrees and education around the topic that she's been talking about today. And most importantly, she has a buddy called Felix, and Felix is her cat. And apart from that, she loves hiking, like anybody who lives in Switzerland, and do a little bit of CrossFit. This week, probably little CrossFit, but otherwise, that's what she loves doing. So let's just welcome Vera on stage. Here you go.
Hello and good morning, Drupal community. A warm welcome also from my side this morning on the second day of DrupalCon 2025. I hope you're enjoying community so far, and also Vienna. I know it's quite early. It's early for me too, so thank you for showing up early and having this dialogue around neurodiversity. It's a topic that is very close to my heart. I brought some figures, some personal stories, and some science. So for the ones who attended Drupal Mountain Camp, I won't get you bored. So there is some new stuff coming up as well. And I've been doing some back and forth between Switzerland and Vienna when I was working independently before Schulke. And I'm very happy that I have a dear friend of mine in the audience for some emotional support, so I'm glad you made it here. So let's explore within the next hour how neurodiversity can be reframed into a competitive edge in business. And this hour, it's not just me talking to you, but I invite you with some prompts to share your experiences or introspect what you are coming up with. So please bear with me, and let's expand the conversation together. So when we hear the term neurodiversity, what does it actually mean? And it goes back to this beautiful lady up here, to Judy Singer, who's an Australian sociologist. And she, having autism, or being autistic herself, she wanted to shift the narrative around what we always think is a disorder or a disease, something that needs to be cured. And this actually gained momentum, this thinking about neurodiversity as it's just so normal, and a variation in human brains, how they are wired. It's just normal. So it gained momentum when the communities showed up online, mainly, and in the 90s, it's around that time frame, and they just shared their different experiences, how they perceive the world. So when we look at neurodiversity, what comes to your mind? What traits, what cognitive styles? And just please, just shout into the venue. What comes up? Special interests. Mm-hmm. Creativity.
Impulse control.
Okay. Hyperfocus. Okay.
Perfectionism.
Okay.
Spiky profiles.
Okay. Thank you. So when I look up in the web, you can find like different cognitive conditions that float around. And I would say this is not an exhaustive list. So you shared now some traits in strengths or things that we associate with when we hear neurodiverse people. So I brought a list where I feel like, okay, I would include these traits, these cognitive styles in here. And what we see most often is dyslexia, we have autism, we have ADHD, but I also want to include high sensitivity in here. There is a dialogue going on whether this should be included or not, but I think it's just an umbrella term where we can like just dance and make up your own mind what you want to consider and put in there as well. So I don't want to make too many boxes, but when we look at this list, there are personal traits in there. There are neurodevelopmental conditions, different learning behaviors, or more anxiety-related, stress-related, trauma-related things in there. And I think there is a power and danger in diagnosis, but it gives us more nuanced language in what we perceive. And there is also a discussion going on, oh, are we overdiagnosing? But I think it helps us to also understand how brains can be differently wired. So when we look at this, we can see in the work context, the ones highlighted in violet are the ones that we are mainly talking about. Why? So the misconceptions are decreasing. I would say it is more common to speak about ADHD in the public. It is more common to share autistic traits and speak about it. But it is also more common because we have a very low cost to invest in some accommodations. And it has like a high impact when we work together. So these are the ones, when you look it up, are mostly aligned with the DEI initiatives, especially in a time where the investments decrease in DEI initiatives. And I think it's very interesting because it feels like humanity is ready to step into a more, it's not just what we see, how people are diverse, but we also can like not see what is invisible to us. And this is where the real magic happens. But let's look at some numbers. So when we look at these numbers, I mean, pick any source, we don't know what we call neurodivergent. So there's still a discussion going on. And we also don't know the exact numbers, but this should give you approximately a sense on what we talk about in society. And again, here, this is why I would like to highlight, and it's my take, that high sensitivity is part of it, because we experience the world in a different way, and it makes up a majority of society. So summing it all up, it would be around 15 to 20%, knowing we don't know whether there are people who are not diagnosed or who are not showing up. It's just what we have today. So society keeps telling us it's a disorder, right? It's in our narrative, something we have to look at. And yeah, I must apologize for bringing up this guy on stage today, but it was really interesting because he kind of fueled the discussion and he brought some more golden nuggets to my keynote. So on the 22nd of September, he was claiming, like, breaking news, and you can imagine me, my bed, in the middle of the night, looking at my smartphone and just trying to figure out, okay, what's going on in the US? Because he basically linked Tylenol, which is a painkiller, to autism. And I think it's interesting to see, again here, it enforces this dialogue that there's something wrong and something needs to be fixed. But at the same time, we have so many celebrities who are showing up with their gifts. For example, we have Greta Thunberg. She is showing up as being autistic and a bipolar climate justice activist. Just look her Instagram account up. And there was, again, a battle around Trump and Greta at the moment where he pointed something towards her character and how she is behaving, and she just returned it in favor once again. So this post had like over 2 million likes, and it just happened like last week. But we do also have this guy here, who, Richard Branson, I think no introduction is needed here, but he stands for me, he's like this personality and an entrepreneur himself. And maybe you have attended the session from Alvaro yesterday. He was also sharing about dyslexic experiences and how you perceive the world, how you learn differently. What I want to highlight with Richard Branson, he's proudly introducing dyslexic thinking also in LinkedIn, so you can pull it up and say the skill set, you can plug in dyslexic thinking, which is kind of a twist in what we see. Interesting, it's a skill that needs to be celebrated. Or we have Nelly Furtado. I mean, I grew up with her music in my ears, and she is representing all the women, the late diagnosed women in their 40s, when they give birth to their child and raise their children, and then they realize, okay, somehow my children, they don't fit in the system. So then it's the point where they start learning about, what am I learning from my children? Because we know there are some traits that are genetically passed forward. And to sum it all up, we have Robbie Williams, and just recently he shared, I've got all the mental illnesses, and be very specific now on the language, again, what he's using, he uses. So in 2023, I think he shared being, having ADHD and being diagnosed with high sensitivity. But when you look into the topic, it's not something that you can be diagnosed, usually it's self-reported. And he shared on the 2nd of October that I have it all. I have intrusive thoughts, I have inner Tourette, the tics just don't come out. But why am I sharing all those celebrities with you? I mean, we're here in this conference at DrupalCon, and me standing in front of you, and I feel like I'm representing all the women in their 30s who are not diagnosed but feel really, really attuned to all those stories. I can learn from it so much because eventually I have language for what I have been perceiving my whole life. For being too much, too loud, or being very, very quiet and needing some more downtime for myself. And I mean, it's a spectrum, right? It's not right or wrong, it is not black and white, but it's like a continuum. So it means when we are looking into diagnosis, there is one threshold or a cutoff value where you have to go over that you get the stamp or the label for one of the traits. So no, I don't have a diagnosis. Do I need one? I thrive in life because I feel like I could perform with my strength and deal with what's coming along. Do I want to offer my data? Yes, for further research. So let's have a look at some more numbers. Because in tech, it's highly relevant. There was a study from the Institute of Technology and Engineering, and they report that like 19% identify as being neurodivergent, or probably because they have not been diagnosed. So we should talk about that in tech. And now, because this is not something I'm just talking to you, I invite you for a short intermezzo. So turn to your neighbor and discuss, what are your experiences with neurodiversity? And I see like people are sitting somewhere spread out. That's perfectly okay. You can shift also to other people, or just take your time with your coffee and hang out with your personal thoughts. I give you some minutes, and then we can share in plenary if you're up to. All right, so let's bring our attention back to the main audience. We do have Betty and volunteers with a microphone, so please, if anyone wants to share what came up during your discussions.
So, good morning. It's early, I know. So we were discussing 19% sounds a little carefully. I think it's too low, at least the experience we have. So I don't know if that says something about where I work, but it seemed a little low. I don't know. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have here and there. Let's start maybe here in the front, and then we go to you.
So I feel like an imposter in the neurodiverse world, but when my 10-year-old got diagnosed as autistic, when we went through his diagnosis, all the points were things that we went for couples therapy with my wife. So I was like, okay, yes, 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 yes. So I don't have diagnosis myself, but I would never change this experience for my life. It's great. I think I love all the positive things about it. And I learned a lot to respect the same thing in myself and my kid through my kid's experience.
Thank you.
I actually would like to raise another question. Would anybody who think themselves being neurotypical to stand up? Okay, so we have one. Okay, two.
So you know,
19% is probably way off.
and it's very interesting. Again, here, you know, I was looking into those terms in neurodivergent and neurotypical a lot, because I feel like we as humanity create again separation. So when I talk about neurodiversity, I would also include everybody, because it's a natural variation of human brains. So I think it's interesting also in just noticing the more stories we have about our experiences, that also all of a sudden others cannot relate, that you don't feel that much. I think it's just pretty interesting. All right, so let's go on. I looked into then more the research part, and I bumped into the term sensory processing sensitivity. And when we look at the definition, it says it's a personality trait that captures inter-individual differences in the way we process, and perceive, and respond to environments, in positive but also in negative ways. So what does that mean? Actually, it's different the way you and I, or you, experience the world, but it means also that there are these subtleties. When I really thrive, I can benefit a lot from a nice food, so that's me personally. So I love delicious food, but when it's not so good, I kind of suffer. I learned more and more about being highly sensitive myself, and I was learning more about, okay, it comes also from the animal kingdom. So are we looking into the sensitivities dogs or cats bring along, or other animals? And we had in indigenous tribes, for example, it was pretty normal that you have shamans, seers, who are more attuned to other realms. But nowadays, it seems to be you have to explain yourself. So what does it mean? A little bit more practical. Elaine Aron in the 90s, she kind of concluded or summarized it in an acronym, DAS, which stands for depth of processing, overstimulation, emotional reactivity and empathy, and sensing the subtle. So I learned more and more, and then I was digging into ADHD, and I was digging into autism, and then all of a sudden I felt like, I'm also all of it. But how is it different? We know in science that there are differences in high sensitivity with autism, for example, when HSPs are very empathetic and very attuned, so it's very easy to read social cues, for example, whereas autistic people would rather say, hey, I struggle with how I interpret social norms. Or ADHD, it could also be that you're like very impulsive. This is what's reported mainly. And HSPs, for example, would just pause before acting. But studies also share that there are so many overlaps. And I was just wondering, what if this was the biggest lie that society put on us? Maybe it's all the same. So let's look into some of the superpowers. So just bringing up a few on stage, and we've heard them in the beginning from others. Okay, hey, I'm super intuitive, or I'm very creative. I can see the big pattern, you know? I can connect dots that others can't. And it makes people very resilient as well, because you kind of have to adapt all the times to what we feel like is normal. And I just want to also highlight, it doesn't have to be that I am bringing all those strengths to the table. It could just show up differently depending on the neurotypes. So again, linking it back to science, we now know, and this is a recent study from 2025, so early this year, that they actually saw, okay, the sensory processing sensitivity is actually linked to higher creativity and empathy. Interesting. And there are just like few studies who highlight the strength. We are so focused on the negative sides, the disorders, something where we have to grow and be better instead of just giving more fuel to where we're naturally good at. But let's see, the World Economic Forum brought up a report, the Future of Jobs report, early this year. And I want to just zoom into this upper quadrant for a second. So it was the question is, so what skills do you see now in 2025 or 4 when they just took up all the data? And these skills who are relevant in 5 years by 2030, there we go. So when we look at the map here, you can see that creative thinking, for example, or systems thinking, empathy, they're like highly on the list what we should invest in, what we need as humanity to thrive. Overlaps, interesting. But I also want to share some of the challenges that come along with living in this world that is sometimes really made just for like the neurotypicals, what we would say. Again, here, only a few to list what I feel like I wanted to bring on stage here. Not sure whether you're familiar with the term masking, but it is, you're like constantly adapting to what is perceived as normal, and it drains your energy. And it's like a mask you pull on when you are like entering companies, relationships, and so forth, but actually it's not who you really are. So it drains your energy. And I want to pick out one other, perfectionism. I was looking into this word for a long time because we tend to say like perfectionism is it's bad, right? But you know, it's so painful for me. I always see all the gaps, things when I look at the screen and I can see like a double, how is it called? A space. I mean, I see it and it disturbs me, you know? So, and then I was thinking about, perfectionism, when we look into nature, there is this perfectionism in how it all weaves together. And I think there is also a beauty. So you can reframe all the challenges again how you want. So overstimulated, also, I mean, just being here on stage, I think it's weird because like the light is like shining through me. I would love to have like a normal sunglass up here. But I learned to just be okay with it, or just then knowing, okay, I can recharge and I can do that. So again, linking it back to science, another recent study says, okay, hey, higher sensory processing sensitivity relates actually to more burnout, to more anxiety, stress, health complaints, and non-prescription medication use. Makes somehow sense if you have like this different filter when so much is going like in and you can't like stop it. But that's why it's very important that we talk about it. But you know, I was then looking into, okay, can I bring that up on stage? Because when I look into the report from Forbes 2024, we also know that actually, basically, everybody, the whole workforce is at risk for burnout. So we have to talk about that too. And I can see also in the program of the DrupalCon that you have like these health topics where you have dialogues around it. I think it's super helpful. Especially when we think also last Friday, did you pause for the Mental Health Day? At Zülke, we had a session around that topic to just have more dialogue around that. So we are living in a very overwhelming world. When you navigate through airports, or you are in public spaces, or you're just like me at the computer and you have like so many tabs open that you can't close your ideas in the evening, or that all the notifications are popping up and it's fun, but you also know that you have the ability to turn it off. So you just need to manage it in a good way, I think. So I was also wondering, okay, we have now these strengths, but on the other side we have these challenges. And I was wondering, shall I invest in those people? When do the strengths outweigh, you know? And Then when I looked at the Harvard Business Review and the Deloitte report, looking at another number that they say when I include neurodivergent people in specific roles, they would be 30% more productive. Which company is not interested in that? So, what if we think about neurodivergent minds? There are our early warning systems. And it could be for mental health, but it could also be for clarity. I mean, I was a little bit laughing at myself and getting okay with, I have a very high, like my need for clarity is really high. And I feel sometimes, how can others be just okay with just half of the meaning or the data around it? So I see neurodivergent minds like antennas or signals in an aircraft. You have like so many lights, right? And then maybe one person is just blinking with ideas or with clarity, with structure, where actually all of us can benefit from when we listen to it. So I sometimes then see the light is blinking, but can you receive that signal? And if you don't pay attention, it's red, but you're not paying attention. So I'm just wondering, what if we would listen to all those silent forces as well? And then one more, I was thinking about so what if this simultaneous rise of AI and neurodiversity is actually no coincidence at all? So we have this wave of so many people sharing more and more, showing up with those traits. And at the same time, there is this rise in AI. And I want to link it back to one statement that you brought up yesterday, Dries. You said, AI takes Drupal's weaknesses and makes them a strength. AI takes neurodivergent weaknesses and makes them a strength. I see so many people who use technology to their advantage at the moment, so we can kind of outperform the so-called flaws. We can use it for using technology to put it in very structured thinking, or we can summarize things. So we would need the people who think out of the box and in different ways more than ever. So now again, this is my invitation for you. Please turn to your neighbors and discuss. So maybe when you look at your teams, your companies, what potential are you actually overlooking? Okay. Let's see who's willing to share. What have you been discussing? There is one statement.
We are in the same team, so we are discussing our team and looking where we... There are a lot of things that we already have, like neurodiverse tentacles in the world of our company. That helps really well. But maybe the quiet people, they are the ones we want to know more. What do you see? And it's hard to not force them, but still get information.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's something that has to grow slowly, I think.
And it's interesting that you bring it up, because when we look at numbers again, I'm often asked about what's the majority in highly sensitive people in introversion and extroversion. 70% would say I'm introverted. So thank you for bringing that up in sharing. So what are we not seeing because people are quiet? And we have quite some, as an organizational development consultant now speaking, there's so many tools or things how you can make them speak or being heard. There is another statement here in front.
We've got one here as well.
Okay, go ahead. So first you, please, go ahead.
I just observed that it was very interesting, the cultural and management style contrast we saw when everyone went remote during the pandemic. Many people were already remote, but for many people it was new. And I think the entire management layer and business leadership layer really ran into the distinction between what they thought of as traditional management, being in the office, looking over someone's shoulder, pulling people aside for conversations at random times, versus the ability for people who work in this more independent mindset to shine. And I think you see the most conflict in these return to office movements from managerial styles and business ownership styles that did not take lessons from that and kind of rejected the outcomes of what was there.
Mm-hmm. I relate to that a lot. I know so many people who were like, finally, I don't miss it to go to the office. It just, now I thrive, cool. But we have, again, this imbalance. I think there is this pendulum going in one direction, being completely in home office, and then on the other side, we want to somehow have this interaction and this teamwork, which is also needed to progress with innovation.
So there's this whole notion of groupthink, where a single person can dominate decision-making, and folks will just go along with that because they want to fit in, they want to be part of the herd, so to speak. And the challenge with groupthink is that it can lead to disasters. Like, for example, the Challenger disaster was caused because people weren't speaking up about the fact that the O-rings weren't right. Bay of Pigs, same deal. There was a decision to not listen to the people who were worried about the fact that it was going to be a disaster. Same with the financial crisis in the 2000s. And the interesting thing is that when you look at neurodivergent people, they can perceive the exact same data in a very different way than people who are neurotypical. And one person, it's been proven that one person that dissents and gives the opportunity to talk about another path can actually break groupthink down completely and alter the ultimate outcome of some of these decisions. And there are studies that have indicated that when you have a mixture of neurotypical and neurodiverse people, they actually make decisions better 80% of the time. I think we should be embracing that.
Thank you very much. I want to highlight maybe it takes quite some guts to speak up, you know? Especially in a time where everything is so fast. And when we go back to the DAS acronym, where we have this depth of processing, it takes me sometimes longer to perceive or to digest data and connect things. So when we speak, again, at the workplace about speaking up, for me it's a question of how do I create a culture where sharing an intuition has the same right than analytical data, where a gut feeling or someone's emotions or like a threat, a new path that you mentioned, has the same value to look into. But you need to be like psychologically safe to speak up, and it really depends on the culture that you have around you. So I told you I will bring up some personal stories as well. When I am working in teams as a consultant for Zülke, I learned that I can kind of read the social fabric. So working with companies through innovation and transformation processes, I enter a room with different people and I just see, they have a conflict, or this person somehow looks different today. Maybe she had a bad day, or they are really avoiding the conversation out here. And everything is data, and I learned to dance with all that I get from the people, not just the way they show up or they speak and what they share. But I also see like the fine lines, the invisible web between the people. And I learned more in studying that for myself. I learned that this is actually one of my really superpowers that I have. But sometimes I would also feel very guilty for perceiving all that. And it can sometimes also be now, like the more I speak about it in public or in my company, that you have some of the reactions, they would say, oh my goodness, I don't want you to read me, you know. But, well, unless it's not very interesting, or I'm offering, if you are interested, I can share what I perceive, and sometimes it's just nothing, I don't know. So, but actually, I feel like this in between what I hear from sounds in words is actually one of a great strength. Then another one, being exposed also in C-level management decisions and supporting or doing like being a sparring partner. Sometimes my unfiltered truth makes others feel very uncomfortable. So I am constantly like pointing towards the gap or where it hurts. But I had to learn that that I'm, you know, I would be in a situation and then I just, like for me, it's just normal, I speak to it, and then I feel like I blew up the whole place. When I go home, it's stirring me and I'm thinking about, oh no, Vera, what have you done again? And you're leaving the people very uncomfortable because, again, my mirror neurons in my brain can already like feel that when I say that, I'm going to hurt someone or that person is somehow then irritated. So, again, the question is, how can I bring it forward in a way that others can also perceive it? I think it's also one of my strengths here when I talk to clients in very early situations where they think I'm very clear what I need, I'm going to order this from Zülke, but then you are having dialogues with them and you really understand, well, actually, what you wanted is not what you need. We have to go down that path. And then how to make them trust you. Also, your team, for example, if you have this gut feeling and something that you feel like, yeah, but here, can't you see that? So how do you make them trust? Because they are, when you work for a longer time with them, they will say, okay, if Vera is coming up with this, we'd rather trust what she's coming up. And I might also be wrong from time to time, right? So, because environment shifts all the times. Here's an interesting one. I love that. At the moment, there is in corporates, there is usually the performance review going on in autumn, right? Where you have like, okay, how am I doing? So we will collect at Zülke like 360 degrees. We would also ask clients to give feedback to people. And so we do have this tool where you collect the data, or yeah, some words. And then in my inbox, it will show up like, Vera, you have a new feedback in your inbox. And then my reaction, first of all, is like, did I do something wrong? Okay, I want to be perfect, you know? And then I take a moment and I look it up, and then, yeah, it's interesting when people then mirror back, okay, you have to get a thicker skin in some situations. And my friends would say, you know, you are one of the most resilient people I know, so I can't relate to that one actually. But it also tells me I have some values that I don't want to be crossed. And yes, I get emotional, and I will stand up if I am working with clients that are crossing the lines, because then it's maybe not me who has to get a thicker skin, but it is like maybe we can become a bit more sensitive and see what is needed, because maybe the system is just broken, not me. And then maybe one more, the time lag. This is also an interesting one. So you have this, or I perceive it as this gift that I share with you. I enter the room and I pick up so many things or data. And you can have an analogy with a ship at the horizon. Imagine in your head that you're sitting at the beach, and then you look out at the horizon, and I would say, here, oh, pirates are approaching. And I would go around and say, hey, there are pirates going on. Oh, we should be prepared, you know, things are coming up. And most of the people joining you at the beach, they would say, Vera, thank you. What do you see out there? I don't know. And so then, okay, maybe I'm wrong, because no one else sees it. So maybe I'm wrong, right? So I started to, I didn't trust that intuition or what I saw there. And then I realized later on, everybody would stay at the beach and say, oh my God, pirates coming! And you feel like, yeah, I've told you 3 weeks ago, but nice that you also notice it. So this is this gift where you feel like, okay, yeah, I see things early on, I might be wrong, and then having people who trust that intuition and that thought, but it also is then very heavy when I go home, and I can tell you when I go home in the afternoon, I will go through my whole speech and think about, oh, what did I tell you? Oh, I missed maybe this very important thought. But I create some space, so this is how I see it. So it can lead to frustration, of course, misunderstanding, but I have been surrounding myself with people who can deal with that and support me in that. So I think I'm here to reclaim sensitivity to the workplace. I think it's important to navigate through that rough time, those rough times, especially also you pointed it out, Dries, yesterday, in how do we approach this new territory together. And you do that with great people and great technology. So let's be honest, companies crave neurodivergent minds, the skills, but leadership, awareness, and processes, obviously, they kind of are lagging way behind. So for me, like really looking into and bringing light to that blind spot is really harnessing the potential, because I think then it becomes, when we are aware of it, it becomes actually a really competitive edge in business and in tech and in society. So I was wondering for a very long time, how can I bring up, like, how would you transfer this now in practice, in your everyday life? And I was aware, I mean, you shared it, who is not somewhere on the spectrum here, or when we underestimate that number in 19%. And then I was thinking in different levels. So how to start, this is the obvious, and you can just do it for companies. And it starts with the basics in raising awareness, in just sharing and making like different neurotypes normal when we speak about it, or making it transparent that this actually exists. But it is also about workplace design. You've shared it coming back from the pandemic to offer this flexibility. And I mean, for me, working in a tech company, this is kind of a no-brainer for us. But there are so many companies out there where this is not normal or not allowed to have flexibility in their everyday life. So it could also be having part-time jobs where you can have adjust your workload in energy load, like in your own energy. So I thrive in the evening, so maybe I'm working in the evening, or sometimes I have this brilliant idea and then I just have to get it done. So maybe what you can look into is also sensory management at your offices. So how can you kind of increase also the possibility that neurodivergent minds feel good at your space? And it can start with the light that you have. It can start with quiet zones. It can start with just also having, noise canceling, but sometimes I don't know whether I like them because it also hurts when you wear them the whole times. I would rather prefer spaces where I don't have to wear them, and then there is just like a quiet experience as well. And of course, when we come back to the feedback thing, think about an evolution of our HR processes. Think about when you want to attract people that maybe having a presentation in front of so many is not the right setting to share and showcase their skills. But also with the whole feedback. I mean, look into that. But knowing that you are kind of aware already of all of this, so let's go one layer further, level 2, and I call it the advanced game. So I invite you to play with the silent forces that we have mentioned. And I mean, I was super impressed when I saw at the entrance you have these communication buttons, and I can just plug on like the red one, don't talk to me, I'm like overwhelmed already. So these are like the tools when it comes to teamwork. How can you make different experiences also tangible and talkable, or that you can see it? So you can leverage technology. I mean, I use speech to text and vice versa a lot, because sometimes I have like so bubbly thoughts that I would just talk to my phone and say, okay, I need to kind of report like 3 bullet points, or can you make it very structured? Because I know that my counterpart in the program management, for example, receives it better because he kind of needs structured bullet points. So happy to provide it. Maybe one more. So how can you make it transparent? We are living in a time where you have constant changes in teams as well. And for me, sometimes it's very painful because I got used to some of my colleagues and how they interact and going through that storm, you know, and solving complex problems. It helps me if I can rely on some people. But when it changes all the time, I have to get used to their ways of working and thinking. So how can I enhance also in what is needed in the team to better work together? And it can be that you don't even have to speak about neurodiversity, but you can also have like, okay, it helps me if I personally love the whole context around a thing, or come straight to the point. Or it can be, just hit me up whenever you have something, just come and tap me on my shoulder. Or please schedule, give me very clear instructions, what is expected from my side, because it helps me to adjust. And then, one last thing, here is where the real shift happens. So when we as companies develop meta skills, so meta skills and lead nervous systems, so it means that we understand the different cognitive styles of our people, and then we kind of manage the system or we dance with it together. I think there is where the real magic happens, actually, because when we have this overload with AI, for example, we don't need more and faster thinking, but we need more like regulated thinking, that we can become present together in a team and pick up what is needed next. So for me, it is really about this nervous system coherence as a collective where we can thrive. So now I want to ask you for one more short session. So tune maybe in, and maybe let's do it in a different way. So when I talk about being present, I invite you to just place your legs to the floor, or you can feel your feet touching the ground. And if you want, you can close your eyes and just try to focus on your whole body system. Maybe you want to pay attention to your breath as well. And then, so let's take a moment. And then just think about what is stuck with you, having heard all of this. And then think about one tiny shift or one tiny experiment that you'd like to do next week. Then I invite you to get your attention out again, expand slowly, coming back to the audience. Focus on the stage. You can open your eyes, come back. And sharing all that with you today, that our brains are really differently wired. I think hiring neurodivergent people and minds, it's pretty smart. But leading with this neuro-awareness, this is becoming genius, actually. Because you're hiring them people anyways. We don't know, because people are showing up or not, but when you're aware of it and you lead with that awareness, that's interesting. But then in the end, I think when we master neurointelligence, this is then where the real future is coming along. And I hope this inspired you to think differently about neurodiversity in the business world. With that, I think we're just at the very beginning of a very interesting area. So I'm super happy to expand the dialogue now with you here on stage for some Q&A and having dialogues around what you want to share and come up with. Thank you.
So, thank you, Vera. We have in the app a Q&A, like where you can put in your question, and that will appear here on my iPad. But we already have a couple of questions in. So
let's see.
First is you have a podcast. And what's the name of your podcast and how can we find it?
So my podcast is called Zartkraft. So when I would translate it in English, it's kind of the combination of being very sensitive, but really wild as well and loud, you know? So, and you can also scan my QR code, which brings you to a link tree where I collected some cool book recommendations or podcasts that I listen to. So maybe you want to look it up.
Thank you. And then there was another question if individuals, should they disclose to their companies where they're applying to or where they're working what neurodivergent diagnosis they have? You know, and if they should disclose that to the workplace or to their colleagues, is there is there anything that they need to consider, or do you have any recommendation how we should deal with this?
So, I mean, first of all, I think it's not the same for everybody. So, my first question would actually be: so why would you disclose it? So, what's in it for you? Because it can get tricky when your environment is not very aware of the topic. So I think it takes courage to share that. I know many people who would say, no, I don't want that because then I get a label and other people are just thinking around what they want. I have others within our company who share it with their people leads, just to also manage their cognitive workload and in project staffing, for example. So it could be a benefit. But I just want to ask you, so think about what feels good to you and reflect on why would you do it.
Okay. And there is another one about, is there any research that speaks about gender distribution among highly sensitive people? So is it just 50-50, or are women more highly sensitive than men?
That's the stigma around here. So studies say that it's actually equally distributed, so no gender things going on here. But we also see that there are more women sharing it because it's a stigma for men again here. But then I'm not a man if I'm not like being sensitive or emotional. That could be again a stigma. So. But when I speak to, in tech, where, I mean, also here the majority are men, here what I see, so the topic resonates with both of them. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so there are many questions coming in, so we are not going to be able to answer all of them, but we have a couple of more minutes. So how do you feel about the working with me profiles, so which contains then preferred contact method, quiet times, etc. When people have this, that's a question that came in.
Well, I highly recommend that one. It's pretty cool when you have it. I call it manual to me. So how can you address it? So when I have new teams, or also when you have at Zülke we have Zülkees and clients, and you come together to get to know each other a little bit better, and it's then going beyond. Okay, not just hobbies, but also like really collaboration. I really like that. So I would expand on what categories would you bring up? Yeah, we can create the template actually.
Nice. And one more here. Should we diagnose people to find problems, or just leave it and treat people without putting labels on them?
I mean, again, up to you. I mean, in the UK, they say maybe we should stop over-diagnosing. I mean, it's always interesting where it comes from, because very often you would go for a diagnosis because maybe you struggle, and it brings you sometimes together with communities. So I think the exchange and what you learn along that way is super helpful. But I mean, you can see it in my keynote title. I mean, I see it rather as a potential, so I would focus on that as well. But it depends on what you see. And we have different experiences, whether you grew up in a very good, healthy childhood or setting, you have a different experience than others. So I would say it depends.
Okay, so the last question, and I encourage everyone that put in a question and we couldn't answer it on stage, please come up here afterwards and maybe have a chat with you. But the last question would be, so the iPad doesn't work now, but I'm trying to remember what the question was about. It was about, is there a lot of difference between countries in the, the public conversation and how things are being done at workplaces. Do you see, and is there a lot of research about where things are going well in some countries or cultures and where maybe we are way behind?
I mean, I notice a difference in countries. So when I look at, for example, in the United States, it is more common to speak about ADHD, I think. Also in UK, people are more open and further down the path than at least in Switzerland, Germany, Austria. But maybe, I mean, we have an international crowd here, so I would be interested in your experiences. I recently had a town hall session at Zülke where I was sharing about the resource group on neurodiversity that we have in our company for the Asian people. And then I was a little bit nervous, and I contacted some of my colleagues to ask, hey, is this really a thing also in your country? I'm not so sure. And she said, or 2 or 3 people, they shared with me, we feel it as well, but we wouldn't openly talk about it because they have different cultural values. So I think it depends, but let's explore together.
Great. So let's give Vera a good applause and thank you for a great topic.
Thank you very much.